know that I'm on live here. I'm still just from right here in Tbilisi, and next week, if things go as planned, I'll be addressing you from Africa, where we've had an amazing amount of developments coming into fruition. So we're just trying to cover all the bases, and I'll talk about that a little bit tonight about the seeds that have been planted and what's going on here. So we've got a lot of really exciting stuff going on, so we'll give some updates on that as we go, and we'll just seeing some exciting 4th of July stuff. We might even get some fireworks here in Tbilisi. It is Saturday night, so usually I think on some of these you've heard it from in the background, so we might even get some. So that's what's going on now. Let me get this message sent out to everybody, and we'll give a couple minutes for folks to get on board here. And I will be, like I said, I'll be addressing kind of on a global basis. We've had a lot of fun with this. Sort of the, there's this concept where, bear with me just a moment. But it's kind of okay, the mic is quiet, they're saying, Talia. So maybe it's not. They're saying it's quiet. Thank you, Yumbum. Let me know if that's any better now. Oh, I was quiet. Is that any better or worse? Maybe we'll get back on there. Well, no, here it's. We're gonna have some professional podcasts before this whole thing is settled, and I appreciate that. So it's a tiny bit better. Okay, that was with no mic. Now we're back onto the mic, and I'm going to talk a little bit louder. We're going to get a production studio level type of stuff here as part of our program. There, say hi, Talita. Hi. There she is. All right. So thank you. Is that any better? Thanks for the feedback. See if that's any louder at all. Okay, cool. Thank you, Gumbum236. It is better. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little louder, and we got the microphone on board. It's been an amazing couple of years, and this I'm going to give kind of the background to some of the story that I've shared already with a lot of different people. And the important part with all this is that we're on this amazing resurgence where the company Concentric essentially was shut down because of the good work we do. And I love the United States American. I wish it an amazing happy birthday for sure. The reality is, and I've talked about this a lot, and I'm not going to dwell on it, but I believe the United States has kind of gone past a curve where it doesn't really even know how to define productivity, right? Manufacturing, job creation, these kind of things. It's kind of beat itself up saying anything industrial is bad and polluting. And it's just kind of this sort of greenwashing thing. And at the same time, however, it's widely known that the United States is, pretty heavily involved with, non-productive industries, and I'm referring not to military because that has advantages out in the private sector, but obviously drug and human trafficking are not really legitimate or authentic and upbuilding. But then if you look around the United States, what's the number one business there? It's insurance, selling fear. So you got a system where it motivates the system to continue to be both the arson and the fireman. And that becomes cannibal economics, right? So that's about all I'm going to say on that, because what it's missing has been, and the proof's in the pudding, is in infrastructure, manufacturing, job, quality job creation, that kind of thing, where it's maintaining even its own sovereignty in terms of energy, food, air, and water production. it's kind of lost those things in my lifetime. And so I think it's kind of ironic. In fact, while I'm at it, I'll say this, that a great Scottish professor, his name was Alexander Tyler. He spoke in the late 1700s, shortly after the United States was formed, and said that all great democracies, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but there's one quote I'll never forget, that all great democracies kind of run through this process. And it typically takes, he said, 2 to 300 years, where what happens is they start out in this kind of adventurous, courageous, fighting for their freedom and independence. And it gravitates up towards abundance. They go through these stages to gain their freedom and then restore things and create a platform for productivity to abundance. And then over time will erode back towards that dependency and towards apathy and not working and then dependency. And here's the phrase, this is why it's important. He wrote that eventually the society will crumble because people will vote into public office those who will give them the most money out of the treasury, and the society collapses due to loose fiscal policy. Okay, so that's a mouthful, but Greece, modern Greece, is a perfect example of what happens when you run a social welfare nation. You can't pay more than half the people from the wages of less than half. It just doesn't work. And yes, you need compassion, and yes, you need wealth with a purpose for it to last. And that's part of what it gets down to, is some of the purpose has been lost. So what I'm getting at and why it matters is because Concentric Industries is a thought out business plan that goes way beyond just, oh, we have some equipment that can work. Okay. And that's, I think, where the industry's kind of missed us, and that the world still is not getting it, because it's kind of like, how could you have an industrialist with a conscience? You know, because you read about like the Carnegies and the Mellons and J. Pierpont Morgan and even Thomas Edison, and Tesla obviously had a great value system, and I think Westinghouse, George Westinghouse, some pretty moral, upstanding people that just kind of got pillaged, by Morgan and Edison. And when people read the history, they're just like, yeah, they're just crooks and people sabotaging stuff everywhere. And then you had, the wealthy people just polluted, and look what they've done and everything. Well, what if you took Rich DeVos's words and said you brought in compassionate capitalism, right? Because what capitalism does is give you a choice, right? That's why Churchill said it's like the best of the worst. Not that it's perfect, but at least it gives people a chance. And what we've done with that chance is said, what if air and water could be cleaner coming out of power plants, factories, and farms, so we can solve the ecological aspect? And then by creating multiple revenue streams, this polymathism I keep talking about, you're able to create more revenue. So you've enhanced the economics, but it ultimately gets down to social justice too, right? Because what good would all these systems be if 47 people out of every million are the ones who just hog all the wealth, right? We see examples of that all around the world. The worst ones are when those 47 people aren't even in the country, that colonialism. And there's all kinds of talk, rhetoric, this, that, and the other thing. You know what ultimately, and I said it today on LinkedIn with some of this, what the best answer is to all those things about the corruption and greed and ugly things that have happened? So what? Because so what doesn't mean who cares. It just means, so what are we going to do about it? And that's what Concentric has come in with this platform to say, it's the four things, energy, food, air, water, what we do. But that it really does, it's not about the equipment and technology. So when people want to come into this organization and say, well, does it work and how's it going to work and do these things? You're missing the whole point. Because yes, it works. Electricity, clean water, food production works. What does it need? It needs carbon dioxide. It needs right temperature control, to benefit, create the conditions for those things to happen. That's all we do with our power systems. And I in some ways, I feel kind of vindicated, because a lot of times people marginalize electricity, and suddenly we realize how important it is, not just with data centers, but also that the waste from these things can support vertical farming, controlled climate agriculture, and that's the aquaponics. But obviously, the graphene's the big kicker, and we've done a lot of work, and we're looking at that. And I'll get into this on our platform of what we've done when we broke out internationally. See, we'd already done international work prior to this, on many occasions, consulting work, construction management, what have you. But we were primarily an American company and still are, our foundations. But I went out in starting really about a year and a half ago. Okay. In fact, about the storyline was about 2.5 years ago, post some sabotage of this company and then the stuff with COVID that we came out of. We basically had a chance to, I say we got a chance to rebuild the company from scratch. And I feel like a kid in a candy store in many, many capacities because I'm getting to do a restart up again. I've already started this business up once. And a lot of people act like, will it work? And everything. I know it'll work. I mean, it worked before. And we didn't have half the plan we have now, the integrated plan, the global view, the Dariel 360 patent. Check it out on our website. I discovered that kind of when I connected the dots. We were up at the Dariel Pass here between Russia and Georgia. Unforgettable week Talita and I had up there in Kazbegi. And I'll never forget it because we kind of named the patent after that. That's our 24th one. It tied everything together. We can take anything with carbon, any carbonaceous fuel waste, whatever, and run it through and create all these different things with electricity, liquid fuels, jet fuel, diesel, um, aquaponic foods, and then ultimately graphene. And it can start anywhere, solid fuel coming in, gas fuel power plant, whatever. It's all part of that cycle, right? Because our pyrolysis process doesn't just make graphene. In fact, it was designed first to make the fuels, gas fuel and liquid fuels from those carbon waste stream, carbon fuels and waste streams, solid fuel. And so when all that comes together, it's been a fascinating circle. So what we've done even prior to then, but since then, putting the whole model together with the graphene component is to look at all of what a society does: power generation, cement kilns, steel mills, dairies, landfills. What else is on that list? Oil, crude oil processing, that produces pet coke that we can use. I mean, putting in all these big industry things, which is where, let's get honest, folks. See, this is the thing. That's where pollution, that's where, when you look at the scale of anything in the human race, industrial consumers consume most, they emit most of the waste, they have all the challenges. So what the world does is say, well, industry's bad. Brr, wrong. That's a terrible response. Industry's not bad. Like I've said it before, what if people looked at pollution and said it's an engineering error? Let's fix it. Right? It's like instead, you see so much advocacy for throw the baby out with the bathwater. And so what's happening? Most of the world right now, it's like, wow, wind and solar don't cut it. Not only do they not give the inertia, on an actual flywheel type concept to give grid inertia there, because it's all, inverter based generation, inverter based resources, right? Because solar and wind both are generating DC, and then it just gets inverted to whatever frequency you want. Well, there's no inertia, there's no mass there driving that. So when there's fluctuations in the grid, you still need peaking turbines and other things that actually have the flywheel effect to give some stability, some robustness to the signal, frequency, voltage, amperage, the whole deal. And that's what those protective relays do, is manage that. And so but you need to have a solid generating source to put behind that, or else you're just spinning your wheels literally. And so as power needs escalate, our power quality has gone in the tank. So here we are saying, hey, we can have coal, oil, gas, waste streams, everything else, and produce baseload power from those. And it's flexible on demand. So we can make liquid fuels if the electricity demand isn't there. It's the best of both worlds, and it's modular, so you get high nines reliability availability that we put into like the coal plants. And so one of the challenges is that the whole world is kind of like, this is what we run into. I'd say, historically, our biggest competitor by far has been to do nothing. We'd make this proposal to municipalities or Fortune 500 companies, and 1 out of 10 would do a project. That's why we've done billions in work. But what would happen is that the um, with all that taking place, we have a scenario where the the power generation needs by scale are greater and growing daily, and so we need better quality and quantity of it. And a lot of folks don't know what to do, so we come in with answers. And a lot of times people are like they it's like a foreign language. They're so good at defining the problem or ignoring it. So then sometimes you come in with the answer to it and they're just like, well, there's not even a block for that yet. And it's kind of like you're warping their brain. And that shouldn't be the case. People should be optimistic that there's a solution, so then when it comes around they can identify it. So what's happened with us, what we did on our international expansion, the response has been overwhelming. I've never seen a sales funnel like this. I've talked the numbers and it's big. I mean, it's thousands of these units can go in, and they're with entities. Everybody says, well, where's the money, raising the capital and the whole deal. And we're working on that. We're grinding through the brave new world of money. But the reality is, our business offering is to be the owner operator, to be the financier, because a lot of this infrastructure stuff, governments don't have the money for it anymore. I mean, it's like when society's broken like that, the money, the resources are all there, and the money's there too. But when you get lopsided governments that have, thousands of more employees than are needed, and they're not doing anything other than just getting a salary and having think tank seminars, and brainstorming sessions and writing, the classic feasibility study, is incredible. And that's the one that is because how do you get, if you're cutting edge, right? How do you have someone else come and do the research, right? I mean, it's such a strange paradox because people act like you've got to have peer review. Well, why? Well, because the deal I've seen, and this is 100%, people who write patents and go out and do these advanced things, they don't just do them to kind of hoodwink around. They do them because they see an answer for something. And it doesn't mean that every single patent's perfect and fixes every kind of problem. That's not even really what I'm talking about. The uh, uh, the one that's fascinating, I'm kind of getting this stuff out with everybody, uh, is getting this information out to everyone, for the um, hold on one second. Hold on one second. Sorry, everybody. I'm kind of getting this out. So the point is that you bring in answers to solve these problems based on being in the trenches solving them, and people who aren't even really sure how to define the problem other than they know it's there, they don't know how to analyze the response. I think, what was it, Malcolm Gladwell said that I think the biggest deficiency is knowledge, because people want a third party feasibility study. That's what I was talking about. But that doesn't, how do you get that? If you're the guy on the cutting edge, how do you get to someone to come in and say, yeah, that's good? Because they're not motivated to say it's good. They're motivated to say it's not, because then why didn't they think of it? Or to say it's not so they can kind of cop it out, drag it back the thing and try to steal it. And that's happened a lot too. We've been through that. That's kind of where a lot of that started. And again, so what? So what are you going to do about it? Well, if you have something that strong and you can stand by it and bring it out, because I think it's kind of cool. And I haven't really thought about this right now, but I'm going to say this, and this will become kind of a mantra. You know what's cool about Concentric? Because I've said that, you know, it's and this goes in line with a song I'm going to mention here in a second too. But one of the things that's happened with it is that it has to have a heart. I've said the line, blind thieves can't really steal a vision. And I think that the the whole concept with Concentric, and when people say it's too good to be true, a lot of times they think the money's too good. And it's like, no, there's a real reality test. It takes land and footprint and capital expenditure. These things don't grow on trees. You got to build and make them, and these are $1 million projects that make billions of dollars. So it's all commensurate, and that's just the way utility is. we've got some neat entrepreneurs poking around at this company saying, man, it's so expensive, the cost of entry. I said, it's actually too small, right? Our main financier out of Singapore, McKinley Investment, they have a 100 million minimum threshold. Okay. So that's nature of the industry. Most of these projects are hundreds of millions of dollars. People want pilot scale stuff. No, we started mega scale. We've shrunk it down to get into several megawatt scale. And the cool part is what we've shrunk it down to is modular. So you want a bigger plant, just second, third, fourth module. It's that a factory assembly line. And the Henry Ford style, some of you've seen that flyer I have out where, a country can have anything they want from their carbon as long as it's carbon black, right? Or I mean, not carbon, but graphene black. The paint black was the thing for uh, you know, Henry Ford said you can have the car any color you want as long as it's black, because he was standardizing. Well, the key is, so that was a thing, just the color of the paint. But what we've done is standardize on the better options. If you can take the best systems ever and standardize them, so you can just design around them, and that's how we're able to. I'm getting to my point here is that we've got a standardized design now that we've applied to over 100 countries, and we can put stuff together really quick. And it's fascinating because we can look at any country's resources and just plug it into this model, and it's awesome. And it's really fascinating. I've never seen anything like it. And I'm an award-winning mechanical engineer. I'm licensed, you know, degree, the whole deal. Whatever, people can say whatever they want on stuff. You can't steal that either. And you can't steal what's in a person's brain. I mean, the intellectual property is the most valuable property in the world. And what's cool about it is you really can never steal it because it's in someone's mind. And Ayn Rand wrote a lot about that stuff too. But the 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 big thing that is fascinating to me is that we've gone out on this international road show, so to speak, and essentially we've been to, I don't know, a dozen countries, and we've got branch offices now in like 20, some places I haven't even been to yet. Um, and and we're working to get there, as we catch up with stuff. But I think one of the most amazing things about it is that the um, the demand for what we bring, to have someone be the owner operator. Because prior to this, people would say we don't want to do it because it's non-core business, we don't have the funding, whatever, and then infrastructure doesn't get built and societies collapse. It's pretty serious. So for us, what we've had is we've gone out with this offering, and we've had many, many signed contracts, but also a lot that have our competitorless contracts, literally. Like there's just no one else who can even offer what we do. And everyone's kind of waiting for us to get kind of recapitalized as we go. And we've been really transparent with that. When the blockchain stuff was really supposed to be a way to raise some working capital and kind of play at that level. We've had a lot of talks, and I'll just leave it at this. What I'm about to say is it's been disappointing because what would it take for 100 million people to invest $1 in something that's a great plan and idea? 100 million people just say, yeah, it's good enough. It's cool. That looks neat. I'm going to support that. But I'll tell you right now, within the blockchain space, it's so dysfunctional that how they even garner a community has nothing to do with what your real business does. It all has to do with GitHub and how many avatars you got in Telegram, and all the guys who are, they're priming the pump with bots. And, it's ludicrous. It's just kissing off a great thing, 'cause the decentralized blockchain, to have a currency that's not backed by a government anything, is a brilliant gift. And right now, I'll say it on record, and it's hard for us because we've lived through this, is that the cryptocurrency industry is just blowing it. What we've got our hands on, people don't even understand. I'll say it again, I've said it before. There's a book called The Law by Frederick Bastiat. It's a pamphlet. It's about 40 pages. It should be required reading for anybody who ever has a business of any kind, even if you own a token, just to even have a bank account. You should have to read that book. It's a phenomenal book. And what's it about? It's about free enterprise. It's about stewardship of resources, human included, as a means of creating wealth. And so when people, if someone's coming to, oh, I want to get rich quick, whatever, Do you even want that guy around? I mean, yeah, sure, you want to make money doing less work and put your money to work for you. But is that really the holy grail? Because you know what? I want to make money too when I'm not there. That's one great thing about electricity and other commodities our designs make is that then if you're an owner in those, then you can make money while you're not there. See, if you're trading time for money, which is a job, that's okay. It's you're trading a service and that's good and you should work for a living and stuff. Then people talk passive income, to go buy a stock and then you get passive income. But that's not really that either, right? It's not really residual. See, what if you not just passive income, but what if you own a company that runs 24/7, whether you're there or not, and generates huge revenues from selling things all day, every day, whether you're there or not. And that's what electricity, food, air, water, graphene, all these things are consumed all the time. The graphene market has huge potential, and a lot of people are missing that. And I appreciate a lot of our partners get the the information about all that and say, "Wow, this is a up and coming market." Well, what do you think? If and the statistics are crazy. There's something like a couple thousand tons a year of graphene made, like basically the equivalent of what one of our modules makes. And the modules have been run. So, I mean, it's commercially proven. It's just time to scale. Post COVID, like a lot of people got clipped financially. Who cares? But see, that's become like the big thing. Oh, well, these guys will see if they make it and stuff. Why didn't, that's what I always say to the venture capital people and the angel investors. And we've had some really good ones step up. The thing is, regarding the whole concept of the investment in some of this stuff, is that, if you have a new upcoming product where you have, we have a technology that can make 10,000 times more graphene than the global market is because it's not being produced. And the experts, everybody across the board is like, yeah, the world could use 100,000 times more graphene, but it's just not being made. So we're in a spot to be able to make it. And then people come and say, well, what about the markets for it? Yeah, what about the markets, everybody? I mean, when do we screw our heads on properly and say, wow, this is by all accounts a in the double digit $1 trillion marketplace that right now is crawling around in the few million dollars. And what we did, we said, hey, let's latch onto that because it's a byproduct of what we make. So we've secured it and everything. And so I see a couple of questions here and I'll address those. In fact, it's what are some good graphene stocks? Here's one of the challenge. There aren't really that many. There's a few companies that are still kind of coming out of the laboratory space, making, trying to get to a ton a day or whatever. To me, the best graphene stock in the world is Concentric Industries because we built it as a byproduct. See, making graphene, the biggest challenge is you have acute and electrical expenses. So people making graphene are doing it in a lab, and they got it like the universities. Like, what do we need a new transformer out back behind the engineering building? What are you guys doing? Well, we're making graphene. It's just a big expense, and it's just frustrating. But if you make it a byproduct of the energy production process, the whole equation changes. And for us, it's like, yeah, the graphene's great. Take it away. We still have a great efficient power plant with multiple revenue streams. People want to come in and call the graphene a problem. So, what are some good graphene stocks? That's the dilemma. People are scrambling around. We had one of our guys, Rod Friesen, sent over a thing. There's a company down in Australia that's selling some cool graphene products. In fact, we trading emails now. Finally, it's the weekend here. We'll get back to them. But they're selling it in like oils, lubricants, and some other coatings and stuff. And it's small, but they're leading the charge in it. And it's like, man, we want to talk to you guys because there's some offtake stuff. We're going to be our offtake. The biggest markets for it are in cement. Look for some cement companies to finally get their head engaged. We've talked to a bunch, and they're all just kind of like, "What?" It's like, hey, you can because see the biggest producer of CO2 by chemistry percentage in the world anywhere is the calcination of limestone. And what that means is when you heat up limestone to turn it into lime and get it into cement material to go into to concrete, you break off the CO2 from it, the calcium hydroxide. So what happens is you get a CO2 emission without, it's not combustion. It's just the thermal breakdown of the limestone issue emits like a stream of pure CO2. And then your heat source for it, which a lot of times is coal and other kind of different fuels, that's also a CO2 source that mixes in with it. Well, we can convert all that into algae and eventually to graphene. And the biggest users for bulk of graphene are the cement companies. And we've talked to several in some of the countries that I'll mention here because our big hubs, we've been to a bunch of different countries, a lot of cool proposals, signed agreements all over the place, interesting, amazing conversations where we got, I just sent the thing out again. We've got well over $10 million worth of engineering expense into optimizing these plants. It just doesn't come for free. Way more than that, actually, what it's worth is. We got over 100, over half the world we've modeled like integrated stuff. And I'll say it now, when I got kind of into this, it was like, well, we can save or make money and improve the gross domestic product of every nation in the world. Even we turned kind of one down because the only thing they really had for a resource was waste. And some Thai company was already coming in with some decent enough thing, better than nothing. So that one kind of went the wayside. But we could come in and do energy crops, and anywhere in the world we can improve things. But we obviously look for the places that have opportunities to build on. And for us strategically, kind of in the geopolitical sense, Oman has been a great ally, the Muscat Concentric Alliance. And we just this morning, even, I was sending over some information to our partners there to get a hold of their Minister of Energy because we kind of ground through planting seeds. I mean, we've modeled where they could triple their GDP with no new fuels. Just capture the emissions from your cement and metals and power systems and convert it. So that's a great example. And then Georgia's another that we just planted some amazing seeds. Just redid a model for all the projects we looked at here. If you stretch up and down the corridor up to Mongolia, the new Silk Road, right? Parag Khanna says that's the future economy of the world. So we're right there in the middle of it. And I realized, it's one of those things that decade we had off, the sabbatical, when everything got stolen and shut down. I thought I'd kind of reemerge in the world and see people doing everything we had designed, 15, 20, 30 years ago. And I've been kind of shocked by the world that it almost fell behind. I mean, literally. I know people, in fact, when you say technology today, people they just say technology, they immediately think microelectronics. Oh, phones are faster. Got a better router. My pixels on my camera on my phone, it's all people. Technology just means microelectronics. Well, the word technology, technique, comes from any ingenious process that humans are applying to get something done. And what is it? I remember the old equation, uh, energy is the ability to do work, and work is force times distance, right? Motion, you know, torque times angular rotation. If it's rotation, it's work. It's something's happening. And nowadays, it's what's happening. What are people doing? It's kind of just we've lost touch with some of it, and it's strange because we're reliant on it more than ever, like electricity, for the microelectronics. So what I'm getting at with all that is just to say this thing that the heart has to be in it. And that's what I love about, see, Concentric's kind of foolproof because we have this all gain some mentality that says if one side wins, the other doesn't have to lose. I'll say that again because a lot of people just look at wars and everything that goes on. If one side wins, the other doesn't have to lose, right? That's called the zero sum game. We defy that by creating systems that economically and ecologically win, and then put it into a business construct that has what? A moral merit on it. It has a morality. So what are you talking about, morals and ethics? Because if you put things together with good science and you don't have a social and spiritual compass that's guiding it, it won't last. Look what happens around the world. Look why feudalism and colonialism and all these things don't work. And see, the enemy wants everybody to pin it on racism and all the foolish nonsense, the ignorance, fear, and prejudice that walk hand in hand. See that then it just you'd say it's all this, that, and the other. It's all about racism. It's all about this guy. It's all about this, sexism or these other things. Those are all just smoke screens for the whole thing about people who can't be good stewards about what we've been given and human resources. And I see in the West, with industry that jobs are just considered a bad thing. And that goes back to your Kipling, right? Back in the early 19 rise to the labor unions, right? Because labor wasn't being treated well, like the kilns up in Lahore, Pakistan. It does. If you have a good business, you can pay people what for the work they're doing and guide them and help them become better and foster it and build more. See, it's the lie of lack that just drives so much of this nonsense instead of the truth of abundance. And that's been our challenge that we keep finding. So we come in after 12 years of being silenced, and what happened? You come out and you say, "Oh, by the way, we've got these great technologies, and we're going to apply a few couple advancements on anaerobic, pyrolysis work." That I said this the other day, or one of the postings up there. People get so wound up over that. Pyrolysis was being used way before it too, but for wood gas to create the gas to light and heat up and use for different utilities around the Temple Mount in Jerusalem with King Solomon. 3,000 years ago, right? And you get different timelines. I've calculated out. It's 1006 BC. So what's that? 20, what are we? Yeah, 20. What year? 2026. Okay. So 1000 to 2020. So it was exactly like 3,020 years ago. Okay. Just routine. Let's gasify the wood, heat it up without oxygen. The downdraft gasifier style takes a little bit of oxygen to burn a little fuel to get a heat source. And this is the difference to understand that, right? You got a basket of wood chips. It's a downdraft gasifier. It pulls air through it just a little bit more than or enough to support some combustion. And then the rest just kind of drives around. You keep it in suspension. It's kind of like, imagine if you had a stack of wood chips and you set them on fire. They're not really going to burn, are they? Because it's so compact. But some will burn, like in this case, at the top. And as they burn, that air will just continue. You're drawing it through, and you get some of the other chips get heated up in their surface area and give off the gases that aren't burning. It's just drawn through. So it's a balancing act. Well, we use now the modern, fast forward electric arc pyrolysis. There is no air at all. There's no combustion taking place. It's all electric driven energy product. Electric energy drives the spark, which I say not a spark. I take that back even because I mean, technically it is. It's like a laser. You see it. There's a light there, but there's no oxygen. It's not combustion. That's what I'm trying to say. But it heats up the fuel to break it down anaerobically with no oxygen. So it gives off these fuel gases, which can be converted to liquid fuels. It's just like any refinery. You get the raw material, and now you just refine it. Easy, not hard to do, proven stuff. Because what is a cracker? How do you refine oil? It's all about different vapor pressures and that the densities of those, whether it's a paraffin and a wax or an oil or the ultimate gas that comes out the top, just fractions out at different temperatures. That's what a cracker tower does. It's how refineries work. It's very well known, very well documented. So what ends up happening though is that we do it now without any oxygen at all, and then a byproduct of that electric arc process, which we can control. After the main processing is done, we run that char back through for a tenth of a second at 3,000 centigrade, and we make what? Graphene, which is worth 1,000 times more than everything else in the box. And what did we make it with? Electricity, which we're actually generating a bunch of. So it's classic cogeneration. We're just targeting what we're using the power for. And there's a bunch of net power left over. So here's the deal. I want to read this, and this is important even for an Independence Day, and you know, uh, what makes Concentric different. Because what's cool is I will say this, that it is better engineering by far, because that's what we've always done. We've just said, well, we're not going to, no limits. If you say something can't be done, I mean, that's like a fuel to the fire. What you can't do is defy the first law, right? You're not going to make more energy than you put in. Right. It doesn't, that can't happen. It cannot happen. There's every engineering system has an authentic mass balance. And energy and matter cannot be created or destroyed. Believe it or not, they're both infinite. Okay, they can be transformed. That's what thermodynamics is. So when you look at that box like that and you say there's an energy balance to be had, you just try to maximize. What are the losses? Let's minimize them, right? Minimum loss equals maximum gain. I mean, it's not that complicated. And you find out that it gets into biochemistry, the photosynthesis part, optics, the laser electric arc part, and the botany of aquaponics, integrating that. And I think personally, I think it's pretty cool. When I wake up in the morning, I think to myself, even you look at my resume, jgarrettsmithpe.com. I ended up forming it's a one-page website. Just it's got my resume on it. And the reason why that's relevant is because what do you get out of better engineering and better application of natural science? I think of myself as a natural scientist. And I'm proud of that part because I had to get out of the box and nobody teaches it. See, when if you dig up into polymathism, you good at many things at once. What do you get? You could probably even Google it and you'll get a thing. It's Leonardo da Vinci, or someone will say how he did, built kites and studied calculus and did all these things and also was a winemaker or whatever else he did. It's like 16 different things he did. Bridge builder, all the cool stuff, and he was an amazing guy. I've read the Da Vinci oh, I forget what it was even called. And there's one of those where you did some drawings even and worked on that just to become a better person. And in fact, I got an email back from the author of that finally. I've been trying to reach out to him. I'll look this book up in just a second. 'Cause I highly recommend it. It was a neat one, about a polymathism kind of thing. And I want to read lyrics to a song because I keep talking about heart. But it's like the Da Vinci book. About improvement, and I'm going to find this, and it's a relatively modern author. I think he's Canadian. Bear with me while I find it here. It's uh, connecting Leonardo da Vinci. No, that's not it. I'm going to find it here. Uh, the Just bear with me as I look at this. But the song that I wanted to bring up is it's called Closer to the Heart. Here it is. I'm going to mention this book first. How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci by Michael Gelb, Gelb. Okay. And um, I really appreciated that book. It's kind of like, again, how to think 7 steps to genius every day. I'm going to go ahead. Uh, I need to find interfaces here like I used to post the other things on X and different stuff, but I'm going to post something. I'm going to drop this into the Concentric group if you guys, whoever's on that one. This How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci, great book. Um, there it is by Michael Gelb. And it's kind of like a sort of a historical look at what it meant to be a polymath. And that's the example you get. But why can't we all be polymathic? Maybe it came easy for me because I remember to myself, I was kind of what did I say? I was a stereotype breaker. I remember is what I kind of thought of myself even in high school because I excelled at sports and I did well in school. And that was kind of like a bad nerdy combo. How does that fit? And it's just I naturally did it, and I didn't. It wasn't like I set out to do. I'm interested in stuff. Like a lot of times people think, well, he's this and that. I would say this part of the education system. If you're going to criticize it, get involved and succeed in it, and then have something to say. I can say this. I would say 70% of anything I ever studied, I was like just about ready to jump out of my skin. Like this is just a waste. It's a waste of time, philosophy, foolishness, or whatever you want to call it. But you got to go through it to get a degree. Well, what if you optimize it? That 70% of what you studied was useful. See, I like engineering because you did learn some skills and do it. And if you can go back and look at the record, while I was in college, getting a 4-year degree, and now I'm a professional engineer, mechanical engineer, 2 of the best courses I ever, and I had Dwight Bushnell at Oregon State. That guy was awesome. My senior year, especially, I remember it was ME 444 was that, oh, don't take that one. That's hard. The power plant engineering course that set the table for my career. I'm so glad I took an awesome class for the late Dwight Bushnell. Bushnell Thermodynamic is one of our branch divisions in the energy branch there with the patent on gas turbine and oil systems. Easy stuff. I mean, you see, oh, super easy. We're trying to go back to Oman and say, hey, we've got the optimized way for it. That's part of the plan. And I'll get into the countries. We're almost out of time here, but I'm going to read this and then talk about what we're doing on a global level. So, but on that whole issue of optimizing how things work, it's a worldview when you just believe things can get better. And here's where it comes in too. This becomes a social responsibility. When I was young, I remember listening to this song like on a record player, an album with a stylus up in my bedroom. And I was probably, I'm going to say I was maybe 15, 14. I remember listening to this song, and I encourage everybody to go listen to this. It's called Closer to the Heart. It's on an album called A Farewell to Kings. And it is simple and powerful. And the men who hold high places must be the ones who start to mold a new reality closer to the heart. The blacksmith and the artist, reflected in their art, forge their creativity closer to the heart. Philosophers and plowmen each must know his part to sow a new mentality closer to the heart. You can be the captain, I will draw the chart, sailing into destiny closer to the heart. It's a great song by the band Rush. Neil Peart, the late percussionist and artist, wrote those lyrics. It says, and Peter Talbot. But I wanted to bring that up because that's kind of a difference for us. And it's why we last. It's why we're still here. Because lesser people would have given up a long time ago. Because the nail that sticks out is hammered down, isn't it? Right? Unfortunately, that's kind of how the world goes. So you got to have staying power, and you got to believe enough in what you're doing to go through with it. Because only love has the grit to resist hate. And I'm sorry that like some of the hate comes from like I'm not going to beat up on it too much, but I'm saying like the crypto space because it doesn't belong there. It's sad that that's like the end game. That it's like why 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 be hateful? Why be cynical in a day and age when there's just such an abundance and progress that's been made? I told it just the other day that I watched the Jobs was the name of the movie, and I look back and guys like Gates and Ellis and Steve Jobs and Wozniak, those guys were making something that didn't exist yet, right? They literally, like, people didn't even, not only did they not know what a personal computer was or something you'd carry with you, on the thing he's talking to the lady, like, look, do you have a typewriter? Great. Do you have a television? Great. What if you could type and it would show up on the television? People just hang up. Like, you're insane. And yet we do it every day now. Well, the part with Concentric that blows me away is that we're really not even talking about anything new, are we? Okay. Um, and with that, with energy, food, air, water products. So we've stumbled upon graphene, the new product, but that's not even really, it's like graphene's going to just overwhelm the materials industry. I mean, come on, it's 100 times stronger and 6 times lighter than steel. It's a conductor, it's corrosion resistant. I mean, the applications in aerospace all across the board, everywhere. It's already being used in coatings and different lubricants. I mean, it's got applications everywhere. And you can put the low end in our business models is it just goes in as a substrate into um, cement, and it still is worth more than the electricity or anything else being made. So you got to ask yourself like what is going on with the cynicism behind all of that, and it really doesn't make any sense. And so here's what I want to tell you. And yes, we're getting funding. It's a funding. Step up, get involved with this. Funding should have been the easiest thing in the world for this. People fund energy, food, air, water every day. You're buying it or you're buying into it or something. So here's the deal though with us. and I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna do something that might be controversial. I'm gonna quote scripture. I'm gonna quote the Bible because there's a great verse, and it's in First Corinthians. I'm gonna triple check the reference. I was talking about it today. I want to say First Corinthians, a letter Paul wrote to the people in Corinth, and I really think there's truth in this. Yeah, here it is. I typed in First Corinthians 3:6 to 9. Isn't that something? 3:6 9. The symmetry of the universe there. But here's what Paul says. He goes, I planted the seed, Apollos watered it, but God has been making it grow. So neither the one who plants nor the one who waters is anything, but only God who makes things grow. The one who plants and the one who waters have one purpose, and they will each be rewarded according to their own labor. For we are co-workers in God's service. You are God's field, God's building. See, the idea is we can plant and water and fertilize and tend, but how do things grow? Right? Mark 4:29. I love it. I love that. That's another one. I'm going to quote another where he says, like the farmer's faith, is kind of that verse in Mark 4:29. He gives that thing that it's this analogy of the growth of a crop, and he says the what is it? I'm reading through here. I'm going to look up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go Mark 4:26 to 29. Here we go, 4:6 9. So I want to read the precursor to it. Listen to this, and I'll tell you why we're doing. Um, yeah, as he was saying, the kingdom of God is like a man who casts seed upon the soil, and he goes to bed at night and gets up by day, and the seed sprouts and grows, but he himself does not know how. See, and we can explain photosynthesis now, right? We understand the mechanism and Lavoisier, did the mass balance and everything else, but we still can't go create chlorophyll. Do you know that? And the lamellae and it that track the sun and how it does all that, we can analyze it and look at it and show how it's done, but we can't duplicate it. The soil produces crops by itself, first the blade, then the head, then the mature grain in the head. But when the crop permits, he immediately puts in the sickle because the harvest has come, right? That's Mark 4:26 to 20. I'm quoting scripture because the there's truth in that. And even in Corinthians, I'm going to go back to that passage right now because we can water, we can plant, we can fertilize and do those things, but the ultimate growth is a supernatural effect. And we take it for granted. If we really took it for granted, we'd be incorporating photosynthesis in every power plant in the world, which, oh, lo and behold, that's what Concentric's model. And that's how we'd create that multi-hundred-trillion-dollar corporation that's really a global corporation of people all around the world participating. See, a lot of selfish people. Here's a question. I'm going to say it this way. A lot of times people would say, "What would you do with $1 million?" And you say, "I don't need $1 million. What would I do?" You know what? If that's your response to that, you're a selfish, rotten jerk. Because what if you could give it away? If is that all you really think about is what you would do for yourself? The whole point is, what if you could create fabulous wealth and millions of other people are involved in it, doing good things? That's the nature of Concentric. And people say, well, that's too good to be true. No, it's not. It's reality. It's people who have enough foresight to realize if you don't have the big four, ecological, economical, social, and spiritual, then you can't win. It's not going to last. Look at America. What wasn't it? Not Lavoisier, the scientist, but it was, oh, you guys, who was you know who it was, who said that America is good because its people are good, right? Remember, I'm gonna find that. I can't leave that one unspoken there. I know I missed on the guy who something else I was looking up earlier. Maybe I'm having lack of knowledge here on memory. I am fit. Actually, I turned 58 later this month, and I think I'm doing pretty good. Toledo keeps me young, and I'm excited about all these things going on. But who was the guy? Where I'm going to look this one up. It was the guy who, right around the turn of the revolution, and I think this, given that it's Independence Day, we can kind of wrap up on this as I talk. We got a few minutes left. Is the guy? Some of you might, yeah. Hi there, Cheste Chanel. Good to see you. It was America is good because Americans are good, and I'm going to kick myself when I see who wrote this one. Uh, I did. I found the one Michael Gelb there on the other thing. Yeah, Alexis de Tocqueville. Okay, the Frenchman, and he wrote. He came and analyzed Americans. He came away and said that America will be great if America is good. And again, I'm not here to bash it, but is America still good? Ask yourself the question. I mean, I was there. I've seen it, and I'm gonna pose the response that not so much anymore, and that needs to change. I can tell you right now at a global level, you've got the two largest countries in the world. One of them still has a caste system in play that honestly, just in the back of their mind, they think that like a quarter of the population deserves nothing more than to live in filth. And that saturates the culture. It saturates their thing. Why clean things up? That's where, you know, Sanjay should live. It's a gross system. Gandhi fought it. And then the other big one is one that just they've got great back. They back their companies and go do things. I'm kind of sad about the lack of imagination. And I'm talking about China trying to push them. They're out there. They got influence, but it's like, you're just part of and it's not so much that they're colonialists. The AIIB, I like their banking structure. The deals they're making, it's not debt trap diplomacy, but it's like, China, come on. You got the backing of the government. The AIB is a multi-trillion-dollar bank. Would you deploy some advanced technologies? This is what's funny. I'm saying this now, if I mean, come on, they're out running around the world doing stuff that's 40, 50 years old and calling it state of the art. And that hurts the rest of the world, because the, on infrastructure, there's a bunch of people all over the planet that are still wrangling with that. It's taken them 12, 13 years, like Sierra Leone, to get permits for a power plant that's technology that we proved in the 1980s. Yeah, there's like no communication. It's a strange gap. And China's not doing anything to help that, because they're just advocating kind of the burn and boil stuff from way back. Hey, there's Caesar. Good to see you. So here's what we've done: planting seeds. We go out Oman, tripling their sultanate. And today I was asked to kind of get that together, the whole deck of that for their minister of energy. And it took me just less than an hour, because I've already got all the information, all the saved files, all the designs, all the everything. And we're continually updating them. Same thing happened in Georgia. We got a thing at 8. I call it the Georgia 8, Georgia 8. Okay. 8 different projects. It really, including the Silk Road and everything, is really about 200 total projects, but by region and stuff. Just revolutionizing all the economies across Central Asia, as Parag Khanna predicted. We've set that table. Africa's calling, because some of you've seen our document that's the interactive map of Africa. We've looked at over half of the, really, like, I think 54. I looked it up. So what's half of that? 27, right, is half. We've modeled like 32 of the countries, or more, more than that, maybe even, and come away with answers that are just overwhelming. And we found some that are so compelling, we got to go. Okay. And while the seeds grow and do those things up here. And it's fun to watch that, because it's like a farmer's faith thing, because it'll grow when you know what you when you know what you know, what we have a hold of. So I'm going to leave with that, to be closer to the heart. That's what this company is about. So if people come on here, and what I find is ironic, because we're keenly aware of it. The burden of proof on us is to raise capital, get some more plants built. People say, if you just have, hey, we got 128 plants we've done. We've proven the technology every step of the way. The graphene production's been done. The pyrolysis has been run, all this stuff. It just needs to coalesce into a simple business model that one entity willing to take a stand can hold it all together. And that's who we are. So the world kind of collapsed this decade with money, Lehman Brothers, Enron out of America. Okay. You have this great thing called the blockchain. Bitcoin started it with just one coin. The other blockchains are so much more diverse and powerful, still totally underutilized. I'm going to say it right here. You can hear it. This will be recorded. I would say that the blockchain concept is, you hear people that we use 10% of our brain, or whatever the number is, some small percentage. I'm going to say that as far as what blockchain's potential is, we're using maybe 1% of it. And that's too bad. It's really too bad. But that's all the more reason to keep doing what we're doing. We're going to pay dividends because it's built into our DNA. That's what we do. And I love the blockchain concept. I love our Panama Corporation, Wyoming. We're still looking into stuff, maybe something on the DMCC in Dubai. We're just trying to find a place where can a real business be accepted in the digital community? Because you live in the real world, people in the digital community. Why is there a firewall? Like, things have to not be real. So you use a cell phone, you're still a person. And maybe that's the problem. A lot of people felt like, oh, cryptocurrency is cool. We can hide and do stuff and nobody knows who we are. That's not what we're about. Okay. So maybe there was a disconnect. We didn't understand because we want people to know exactly who we are because we are concentric and we operate closer to the heart. Good night, everybody. Happy 4th of July from here in Georgia, the nation, and be good. Enjoy the fireworks and have fun. Enjoy the holidays. All of you in America, I know it's morning time still coming up. 11 in the Pacific. I'm sure the weather is great across the country. Remember your heritage. Francis Scott Key, who wrote the Star Spangled Banner, he was in a prison in Baltimore when he wrote that because they really were fighting for their freedom. And I posted a thing in LinkedIn today, Reckoning of the Reconstruction. Take a look at it. Happy Independence Day. See everybody later.